Hello and welcome. This is Neil Hambly. I'm from Beacon Intelligence, and this is our Friday Focus webinar. So this week, we're going to be getting started with a look at Power BI in Synapse Analytics. We're using the Power BI service, but inside one of the Azure data products called Synapse Analytics. So I'm going to explain how we do that and some advantages of actually taking you through that process step there. Okay, just going to mute Eric there for a moment because there's a little bit of background. So we probably have a couple of people join us for the session, but we're also recording this session. So if you're watching it live, hi, welcome. It's now the 15th. It's 2 p.m. UK time, London. We're going to do another 30-minute webinar for you. If you're watching this as a recording, where were you? Join us live for another session, but we're going to show you all about the Synapse Analytics pipelines today. So there's Power BI and Synapse Analytics, I should say. By the way, next week also we're going to do a new Power BI webinar. It's about incremental refresh and some of the options and capabilities and some of the rationale about how we go about doing that. Depends on the size of the data set, etc. That's for next week's session. This week, let's have a look at Power BI in Synapse Analytics. So I've got one or two slides, not many slides this week. We're going to go focus right into some demos. So really, it's kind of getting started with Power BI in Synapse Analytics. There's a series of steps I can take you through. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to link our workspace. That is, the Synapse Analytics is going to have a linked connection to our Power BI workspace. And we can also create those workspaces as well from inside of the Synapse environment and create data sets. We're going to go through some of those capabilities today for you. Once we've got that link connection, we're then able to access the data sets, even create new ones, and we can look at some of the reports there. I want to show you some of the things that do work today and some of the things that also, if you're trying to use Power BI, for example, like scorecards, I was trying this out earlier, we can see that we can create a scorecard in Power BI workspace, but I can't quite see that in Synapse. And I'm going to show you some of the things we can and can't do and some of the advantages of then using Power BI inside of Synapse. So let's get really kind of over with the demo. So we're going to kind of get straight into that demo. Let me escape out of the PowerPoint there. So first off, if you're not familiar with what Synapse Analytics is, it's essentially a kind of ecosystem of services. It used to be known as the Azure SQL Data Warehouse, but it's kind of evolved from that. We've got additional capabilities. So we've not just got the data warehouse database and all the great capabilities that has, but we have Spark Engine, lots of analytics can be done. We can do a SQL pool, so that's a on-demand dedicated SQL pool. We have a serverless version of that that's built in as well. You can do an Apache Spark pool, and we're going to show you some of those that we created today. I can show you also where you can go and follow through and do the same steps for the demos that I've done. So it kind of makes it easy for you to kind of follow through the steps there. If you have questions, do put those in the chat window for us. We will endeavor to answer those. But if not, just sit back and relax and enjoy the journey. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of what Synapse is, and then we're going to show you how we connect all the dots and get all the services up and running. Again, this is a 30-minute webinar, so we're going to be kind of straight to the point and show you all the good stuff. So first off, I've gone into Microsoft Azure, and I've gone in and I've created a resource group. In this case, I've just created one called Friday Focus. But in here, what I do have is some dedicated resources already. So I've created a Synapse workspace. I've called this the SNYWSFF. So Synapse Workspace Friday Focus. And in there, I created and made that workspace, that studio access available. I'm going to show you and use that studio throughout the demos today. In addition to that, it created a storage account. And what I've done inside of that service as well, I've created a Spark pool, and I've also created a SQL dedicated pool as well. I'll show you how we do those steps as well. So let's go into the workspace. Now, if you're familiar with Synapse, you would have maybe done this before. Essentially, once we've created it, we are going to open up what's known as the Synapse Studio. This is a very good, amazing tool that allows us to interface with all the different capabilities of that. And if I show you on the screen here, if I click on this open link, it's going to open up my Synapse Studio. It's going to go to my home page, just to kind of get you up and running with all of the creation. So this was created today, ready for this demo. It took about 6 or 7 minutes to create that Synapse workspace, by the way. So that's why I've done it a little bit early. And also I've created some of the steps that I will kind of talk you through those. Obviously, just from a time component, we are wanting to kind of just make sure that we're dedicating all the time to showing you stuff rather than waiting for stuff to stand up. But the steps I'm going to take you through are already kind of documented, and you're able to then kind of go through and follow these yourselves as well. What we will do is we will put the recording of this video up, and I'll put some links in the description of that YouTube video. We'll send out some emails, by the way, to let you know when that's ready, and you'll be able to go and see those links and access those steps as well. But I'm going to take you through what those steps are. So here we have our Synapse Analytics workspace. And what I've done here is on the left, I've opened my kind of entry up. You see we have a home entry. This is great for kind of getting started with the service and showing all the kind of activities that I've recently worked on. In here, we'll also be able to kind of walk through and look at some of the great capabilities. And one of these might be getting started with Synapse. Now, if you actually do click that link, you're going to get to this page here. And this page is exactly what I've set up this morning. So it just take a little while. I mean, it took me a couple of hours to kind of get all of this up and running and performing the activities. So obviously not ready for a 30-minute webinar, but we came and created our workspace. We created a couple of the services like the Service Pool, Data Explorer Pool, the Spark Engine, etc. But I wanted to get down, I wanted to get this ready for visualize data with Power BI, which is step number 8 in this list. But I did the previous steps to get the data in there, get the services up and running, which we're going to use as demonstrations for you in a moment. What we're going to do also is I'm going to show you that I created a workspace specifically for the kind of entries that we're going to be doing today. So there's a workspace called the NYC Taxi Workspace, which is the same name of the workspace they do in the demo. And I've created a simple report. Now, the report is not fancy at all. It's just a couple of bar graphs, one visual with a slicer here that I can kind of move around. But the main purpose of this is I want to show you this report here in the Power BI service. I'm going to show you the Power BI report itself. So I'm going to go and grab that Power BI desktop. If I can get that into the right place. And you can see this is that exact same report there. What I've done is I've created this report and brought the data set in and created a couple of reports with a slicer and uploaded that into my Power BI service. And I'll show you the Power BI service kind of connectivity. Well, what I can also do is once I've got that workspace connected, I can create new reports and I can access my reports and also connect to other workspaces as well. So what we're going to do in the Synapse workspace, I'm going to show you how we kind of do all of that. So let me go first off to the very first step that we're going to do, which is actually creation of the Power BI connection. It's called a link service. The link service is essentially our ways of, just connecting with a different service in Azure, in this case, the Power BI service. And I'm going to connect to a specific workspace that I have. In this case, I'm connected to the New York C data set, also a sales and marketing demo, Power BI report, and also a dashboard and a day report as well. So there's a couple of mixed report workspaces there. One of those is normal kind of pro workspace. That's the dashboard and the day. So it doesn't need any premium services or any premium licensing. We can connect to any workspace there, as long as you have the rights to connect to that workspace, of course. And we got a couple of premium ones in here as well. So I'm going to look into the link service. I'm going to show you the connectivity. And basically, what you can see here is got the name of the workspace. I gave it the exact same name as the one I've used in the Power BI service, just to make it easier for me to kind of figure out which one I'm working with. And I can see here that I actually have a workspace ID. Now, when I created this workspace connection, I got to choose which of these workspaces I want to do. And this you can see here, this is the one that we were actually connecting to the NYC Taxi workspace. I've got a report and a data set, and I've also created a scorecard. And I wanted to show you that I just created a scorecard just to see how this would be represented in the Power BI. So it's represented like this in the Power BI service, but how does it look in Synapse? unfortunately, there is a bit of a disconnect at the moment because this isn't a Power BI report. This is a scorecard. And although I can see that there's a Power BI kind of report called scorecard, that's the name of it, I can't actually see anything in there because it's not giving me that visibility. So there's a little bit more work for the Power BI team and the Synapse team to get all the integration. So it's unfortunate, maybe we've not quite got full compatibility of all the services and all the capabilities in Power BI service right now. There is something I could do. I could take some metrics, kind of represent this the same, and then create those metrics in the report inside of Power BI, and that would be another way around for me to get that level of information here. But you know, not using it straight out of the gate is a little bit of a challenge right now. So let's go and look at how we do this. So I'm going to go and create a brand new link service. I'm going to got all the options here. I'm just going to type Power BI quickly in here, and you see we get the Power BI tab come up. I'm just going to click continue, and then this is where I get to choose the workspace name. So I'm just going to pick a random one here. I'm just going to pick, say, one of my DA100s, and you can see here that it's got a kind of GUI that follows it. Let me just do this one, and I'm going to then call this the DA100 as well, and then click create. Now, all I've done is I've created that connection, but it doesn't exist yet because we haven't published it. So what we need to do is publish that capability, and this then makes that live. It's kind of actually kind of taking it from a kind of temporary state to a version. So here we're going to create a new link service. Takes just a moment to be done any second now, and once we've done that, we can then utilize that. So it's been published. I can see now I have my DA100 there. Now, it doesn't have much more information here, but I'm not going to really use that there. I'm going to go over to develop. This is the third tab. You can see under the Power BI, I now have, let me just refresh to make sure it's all there. I have the 4 connections. I have my DA100, I have my data sets. And here's the data sets, by the way. But also notice I can click the kind of icon to the right of one of those, and I can create a new Power BI data set here. So I can kind of decide also, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to create what's called a Power BI kind of connection to a data set. I can use one of the existing SQL pool or the DataOps version database. So these are services that I already have deployed. I'm going to use the SQL pool as an example and click close and refresh. Actually, let me just click the link there. So that is now downloaded a file which has the PBIDS extension, which is Power BI data source. So I'm just going to open that up. I'm going to then go and grab that, and I'm going to open that file up. So give me a moment. It's just going to get that started. So all I've done so far is I've kind of said, right, I'm going to create a new data set. Now, let me kind of just bring over the dialog. You see here that I do have a connection at the moment. Now, I'm not going to be able to zoom in. I thought my Zoom was working, but it seems to mess up when I do the Teams, etc. But you can see here, the name of the server there is the name of my Synapse Analytics workspace .sql.azure synapse.net, and then colon, and then it's the name of, in this case, the SQL pool 1, which is the name of the dedicated SQL pool, the service I'm going to use to connect to that database. Yeah. So here I do have a data set called the NYC taxi trip small. By the way, this data set and the steps to set up the SQL pool are in those instructions I showed you earlier. Again, I'll give you the link of that in a bit. So I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to do that, click the box and click on load data. So what it's doing now is going to go and create that new connection for me. So I'm just going to then kind of say, I want to make this, so there's 2 ways I can obviously connect to data inside of Power BI. Now, for what we're trying to do here, it might make sense to actually switch this to what we call a direct query. I'm going to keep that import. Well, actually, let me keep it direct query now. So what that means is it's connection string to the database that is connected to that SQL pool 1 service. So when I create this, the service, it creates the database behind the covers with the exact same name, and I'm going to then be able to put data and load data into that. Now that is a dedicated SQL portal, so it's got kind of SQL Server syntax. It's essentially a data warehouse with 60 nodes under the covers, and it's all running. So I'm going to say I'm going to do direct query because I'm probably likely to, because this is a data warehouse, working with large amounts of data. Probably more data than realistically I might want to load into a Power BI file. Of course, Power BI import is always going to be the most efficient processing throughput of a Power BI report. But direct query, especially with something like data warehouse behind it and the size of the data warehouse, in this case, I think I've got, let me go and look at the catch-up of it. It's the DW1000 size. So that is the size of the database, and then the kind of the throughput that that service can provide is based on kind of the size I give it, starting with like a 400 and moving up, or 100, sorry, and moving up in 100 increments. And we can then get to a kind of much larger size kind of throughput capability of that service, which means when we're talking about billions of rows of data or large amounts of processing, that service can run really fast. What it does, it splits the kind of the workload out. The queries get kind of distributed across all the nodes. There's probably some data that's kind of been positioned across that data, so maybe a round robin deployment, and we're going to be able to use that. So I'm going to use the direct query. I'm just going to wait for that now to load. So give me a second. It's now loaded, and if I bring that in, we'll see that we have one data set. Actually, if you look here, you notice I don't have that middle pane. That middle pane is my data pane. So I've got my canvas pane, which is called the report. I've got my, in this case, my model pane. I can see actually by looking at that it's a direct query. It's the database is called SQL Pool 1. It's on a server called synwsff.sql.azure synapse.net, and it's a SQL Server database. Okay, so I've got lots of data in there. I'm not sure how many rows there are. Let's actually go to my canvas. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and start a new report. So let me just put a matrix up for a second. Just make things a little bit easier for everyone to see. I'm going to bring that into the center, and I'm going to drop in a couple of items here. So let me get my total amount, and let me move this over a little bit so I can see all of the IDs. There we go. So I've got my total amount. Now what I want here is I want a also a kind of slicer here. Let me go and create my passion and count slicer. Move that to a filter. Change that down to say a list. Let's resize that a little bit and move that out. Move that over here. So I've got my report there now. Obviously not a lot here. So let's go and bring in some additional thing. Let's look at, say, the payment type. So I'm waiting for that to process. Now that's going obviously and hitting the back end. It's a direct query, so it's running through and it's connecting to those services, and we can see all that information at the moment. Now let me kind of filter this on as well. So what's happening right now is that this is creating a connection to a database. Now it seems to be taking a little while to load, which to me probably shows that the service itself was in a kind of a state that it wasn't running. So it's actually now, you can see here it's kind of run up. If I change this now, these are moving nice and efficient. So it probably needed a couple of minutes or minutes to kind of the actual SQL pool up and running. I could have checked that actually. So let me also add in some additional stuff. Let's go in and let's kind of say we're going to change, or we want to also look at the, we can find it here. Oh yeah, the distance in miles. Okay, right. So I'm going to bring that in as well. So I can see the distance in miles. I can see the total amount. And what I might want to do then is I want to find, so I've got my total amount, and let me get my total amount as well. So I've got my total amount. I've got how much I'm paying in tolls. Let me actually also just change these to be dollars, just so I kind of got some format in there. Okay, so we've got this in dollars. Let's also change the total amount to be a, say a 2, let's go a 2 decimal. There we go. Right, make everything nice and kind of easy to read. And Also, let's kind of make that a little bit bigger in the size. So let's go size here, and let's kind of let's bump the font up a little bit, just so you can see that on the screen there. So I can see I've got my payment, total amount, distance, and I might want to do some calculations where I'm going to do, say, an average of, say, the total amount based on the number of passengers, or kind of how many trips I've done, for example. So I might be looking at something like a trip ID, a trip amount, etc., time of pickup. So what time of day, who does the best trips, what's the best locations? This is maybe the analysis I want to do. Okay, but for now, we're going to leave that there, and let's actually go into switch that over to a kind of a bit of a chart there. So you can see here, we got our total amount. Let's add a little label in there as well. Turn on the labels. So we have that, and let's actually just change that to be some values in the 1,000 range. Let's have a look. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, so and we can overflow text there. Cool. So you see here, I've got a little bit of a report there, and actually just make that a little bit easier, maybe to read that way round. Okay, cool. So it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to publish this now into one of those workspaces. I want to show you what it looks like when it's in the service and when it. So maybe I'll just create the report in the Power BI desktop. I'm going to publish. So I'm connected into my there. So let me actually give it a name. Let's actually give it a number, different number. So we're going to say number 2. I'm going to say that there. So it's going to ask me now which workspace I want to throw in. Remember, we had 4 workspaces, and one of those was the one I just added, which was the DA100. So I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to actually, before I do that, let me just move that out the way before I publish it. So I want to show you it doesn't exist yet in. So in here, I don't have that new report. I've got some of the existing reports. I can show you those reports and how they look. You can kind of see that we have some different reports there. You know, as they would look inside of the service. Nothing really kind of too fantastic looking there. Maybe this report metrics one is a little bit, maybe another example there. So we've got a few examples of Power BI reports. So that maybe this is example of one that we will want to use, and then we want to kind of, let's go to say market share, and we're going to go and maybe run this report here. Let's maximize it and run the playback. So I've got the full functionality exactly the same as if it's in the Power BI service. Cool. All right. What I want to do now is I want to create a new report, but I don't want to do it in Power BI desktop. I want to do it in the Power BI or Synapse Analytics service itself. So we're going to switch over to that. Let me just bring this one back and publish it, by the way, just so we can kind of put it in the right place. So I'm going to put it in there. And I'm just doing this just to showcase that this is live and this is something you can do. There we are. It's ready to go. And if I show that in the service, not very exciting to look at. It's just a quick kind of demo report that has some information. Well, I want to show you the report's been now published into that service. So we go into that workspace. I've got my additional report there, FF2. Okay. And we go to my Synapse, and I'm going to go into the DA100. I'm going to refresh, and there's that report. So let's click on it. And here we have that same report with the same functionality, and it's doing exactly the same. And what it's actually doing, it's running Power BI as if it's in the service. You've just got a kind of an embedded view of this inside of the tool, which is the Synapse Analytics. Okay. So we've got all the same functionality, and it's the exact same report. It's not a copy of the report. This is the workspace that we're connecting to. So we just connected the dots. So let's go and create a new Power BI data. So let's just refresh. By the way, remember earlier, I created that data set there. Now notice that this is a read-only view. Really what that means is I can create the data set here, but if I want to manage it and do anything to the data set, I've got to go into the Power BI service. So I could do that. I'll just switch over to the Power BI service. I can go down to my data sets. Actually, let me just do this. Let me go kind of make it easy to show you this for a little bit. So here's my data sets. Here's my data set here. And what I could do is I could go in and I can edit this. I can go and work with this report here. Okay. So I can click into that. I can go and do changes to it, refresh it, even download the file and work on it. But generally, what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to schedule some refreshes, turn on some additional things like aggregations or refresh, might be an hour or every 15 minutes. Notice that this is different than what it was recently. So it used to be every half an hour, and this is a pro workspace. Sorry, a premium workspace. It's got a little diamond symbol to it, which means it's got a premium capacity capability to it. When I do a refresh, it used to be you could have 48 refreshes in a day, which obviously was every half an hour, and you actually chose what was the kind of frequency of that. So I could go and make the changes, but also notice I've got my full connection string, and I've got additional requests being accessed, dataset images. I could kind of do a whole bunch of stuff around this, as well as if I had parameters in the dataset, I could perform all those. But essentially, I do have a connection, and that connection is used in the OAuth2 connection, which is my kind of Azure Active Directory that's going to connect to, in this case, my SQL pool 1 on my server called Synapse Workspace FF. So let me show you what that looks like. This kind of click sign in. So I'm just going to confirm my sign in. Here's my ID I want to confirm, and it's just going to complete and make sure I'm good. So by the way, when you first upload, you're probably going to have to come in and set that connection string, because when you first created it, it probably doesn't exist as a connection as OAuth2. So you want to come in and connect that, make sure it works. Otherwise, your reports probably won't actually come up. There'll be some errors there. What's SQL pool? Well, basically we go into let me go to the management, and I'm going to go down. You can see we've got analytic pools. We've got the SQL pool. Here's one I created, and it is a 1,000 size capacity. And if I click into that, you see I've got my kind of URL of how to connect to it. I've got my configuration. I've got other information around that. But basically, I'm connected with an account called SQL Admin User. The password has already been kind of hashed and synced, and it's all good to go. If I want to do some more work, I've got some other information there. I also have my SQL Spark pool, and that's the one maybe we also want to use when we're using some notebooks, etc. I'm going to show you these notebooks and files in a moment. And Data Explorer pool, we're not doing this today, so I've kept this free. I've not created any resources just to keep things nice and clean, but I could create a pool there. So under my connections, I've created my 4 Power BI services. I've also got my connection to my SQL Server and my data lake, Azure Data Lake Gen 2, ADLS. So when I created my Synapse Analytics connection or workspace, it said what was the Gen 2 I wanted to create or link to, and what is my file system. So I created a couple of entries there, and we went through that. Again, those instructions are going to be in that start input. So we've got all that ready to go. Let's have a look at some of the code that I used earlier. So notice we have, let's start off, we have some scripts. By the way, I wanted to just check that I could connect to everything earlier, so I can kind of go and run my connection there and get some data from the file, the Parquet file, which I've downloaded. Again, gives you the path to where the file is. You can go and connect. So again, this isn't running, so it's actually going to start that service up and get that running. So that'll be up and running in a moment. I also then created a external data store to my file system. So by the way, the file system is, I go in and show you my Azure environment. So I'm going to my Friday Focus resource group, and I've got my Friday Focus storage account. In here, I do have my blog containers, and here's my Friday Focus file system, Friday Focus. In there, I have a few folders, and I've got like my Parquet file. By the way, this is not very big, it's only about 5 meg. It's got a couple of million records in there. And here's some additional resources that it created with the file, say the Parquet file, that I actually can go and look at as well. Okay, so while that's just connecting to that, which it's probably done, and let's have a quick look. So let me just make sure this, oh, so there's already one already open, that's why it didn't connect. So I'm just going to close this up. Number 3 was just kind of giving me another way of doing that using the open row set. Again, we don't need to do that. Let me close this one up as well. The thing I want to show you mostly is we created a new database and we created a new table. And what we've done is we've loaded into our data warehouse using the round robin connection, the information. And we copied that in, and that's all the information we had. And then we've got our data set under our data pane there. So I open up some of these, you'll see that we do have something like the folders, etc. Again, under my workspace, here's my New York data set and my table. And I'll just do a quick kind of 100 rows. I know we're pretty much out of time, so I was going to show you the run of that. I've got the data for those 6 rows and the sum of the distance and the average trip. And that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to do as my analysis in Synapse Analytics. Once I've kind of got that down, I've done some analysis, I might want to create my Power BI report that's going to give me that information. So again, we can go to develop, go into Power BI, open up a report. In this case, I'm going to open up the marketing workspace one and this one here and open up my report. And this is where maybe I'm going to do a kind of a report analysis. So this is Power BI report running inside of Synapse Analytics. I created all the steps and resources for this today, and I can go and create and connect to any of my data warehouse. Sorry, I can create my data warehouse connections. I can also connect to my Power BI data sets. I can do analysis. So one of the reasons why I want to do this is because we're going to be able to kind of do some really good analysis on our existing Power BI data. But also we can bring in other data sets and do additional analysis and kind of have a complete kind of analytics ecosystem that does that, including some great reports. Now, I didn't show you a whole bunch of notebooks, but there are some Power BI notebooks as well that I kind of ran earlier that looked at the same information, and we could do some kind of charting and some additional kind of analysis there. So I want to do something really quick and easy. I could do that analysis in the notebook, and then I could go and create my Power BI report down the road. Okay, that today is the end of today's webinar. So thank you very much for joining. What we're going to do now is we're going to have another session next week, and the next week is going to be Power BI incremental refresh and all the kind of capabilities around that. Again, the video is going to be uploaded, the links to the kind of training and the service. But if you want to kind of have a look at this straight today, go to the home page, go into the kind of second entry here, get started, click on learn more, and follow through this link here, which I'm just going to put into the chat window. So if you have it there, it's ready to go. Have you invested the cost of refreshes or direct queries serverless? So excellent question there, Travis. For serverless, which is the on-demand, you're paying around about, I think £3.80 per terabyte based on the throughput of the data volume. So again, it depends on the size of the data process. And if you want to do a kind of analytics, so Azure calculator, and go into there. If you want to kind of find out what things are, we can go into here. I'm just going to search for Synapse. Oh, there we go. I'm going to add that in and view that. Now, if you come in here, depends on what you're trying to do. So if you want to do, say, I'm going to the serverless, which is down here. Sorry, I had it up. I went too far. So I'm going to do something like, say, a 100 size dedicated. And we're doing basically about £1, $1.5 per hour based on the pay-as-you-go. If you go to reserved, it kind of can jump down into kind of some savings there. Pay-as-you-go is about $1.5 per 100 blocks. So you can see here as you go up, kind of 1,000 will be about $15. Now that's for the full hour of running that service, that compute. So if you leave it on the background, it's running and kind of continues running, it can be expensive. So serverless means that you can kind of run your query, and then when it finishes, there's a small amount of time it waits for it to go, so no more work come through, and it shut itself down. But it means that the first query takes an extra minute, probably to have that service kind of reignited, turned on. Hope that answered the question. Again, you're going to need to kind of do some analysis here. There are different versions. If you're going to just do SQL and you're just doing queries, remember you can do an import. So you don't have to do dedicated queries. You can do imports as well. So kind of run your analytics, get all your work, put it into this as your data warehouse, and then run that kind of at the size it needs to be, and then maybe do imports into your Power BI. But usually your data warehouse runs 24/7, but you can have a on-demand version as well. Hopefully that answered that question. If not, get in touch with us and we'll be able to answer that question in a bit more detail with you. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the recording now.